What's up, humans? Welcome back to the Human Music Podcast. This is episode 88, Taking Creative Risks. Now, many producers will get stuck in the trap of trying to do the thing their favorite artists already did, becoming bogged down in cliches and being afraid to take creative risks. It's time to step out of the box and make your own box that's outside that first box. Let's get our hands dirty and talk about taking creative risks. The song of the week is Tesko, Smells Wonky. Go support, run that up. Nice dubstep tune from our boy Tesko. And support the sponsors while you're down there in the links section, like Dojo TV, where you can get free producer live stream classes from the Producer Dojo Senseis and join the private Discord. Yummy Strums, where you can get high quality guitar samples, loops, one-shots, racks, more from our very own Tesko. You can instantly level up your productions with these top quality sounds at yummystrums.com. The weekly download, where you can learn from Il Gates and his private weekly group lessons and get access to over 250 more episodes in the archive for just $20 a month. And guest practices, where you can learn from Seth Drake at the Approach Institute. He's the best engineer we know, and your first class over there is free at the Approach. Those links are down below. Also, you can go get more episodes of our socials, free sound packs. Find us on other streaming services over at thehumanmusicpodcast.com. All right, without any more to do, let's get on into the episode.
Hello, people of Earth. This is Tesko with Rip Kenny and Trap Jesus, and you're listening to the Human Music Podcast. Woo!
Human Music Podcast. I like it. What's up, humans? Welcome back. Welcome back.
Welcome back.
Hey, we're doing it. Yo, we're out here
Ad-lib podcast.
recording early as fuck in the morning because schedule, Christmas, etc. What you gonna do? But here we are, all with our mugs of things. And trying to wake up, and this is a risk for us, because we're not usually doing this at this hour. But
No, it's true.
sometimes you got to take creative risks. Segue into the topic.
Dude. Wow, I didn't know if we'd be able to do it. I'm confident now. Let's go. What a segue.
Maybe starting off strong.
Yeah, so if you couldn't tell by that reaction, they didn't know I was going to segue into the topic that quick. But yeah, that is our topic for today. Taking creative risks, getting weird with it, and not being afraid. That's about to be, by the time y'all listen to this, it'll be close to being 2022, or possibly already 2022, or also quite possibly well after 2022, because, the internet.
Future.
Yeah. Welcome to the future.
Future. You see that SpongeBob episode? Everything's in Chrome.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
I forgot about that.
He just starts like convulsing. He's just like doing crunches, but like losing his mind. It's like, future. So the world around him is all chrome. It's all robots.
As an aficionado of the color black, I hate chrome.
What about Chromeo?
Really? Yeah, I like him.
I mean,
Yeah, me too.
I really hope the future isn't just chrome, because
what if it's like black chrome? What if it's all matte black?
Well, see, the thing about black is that if everything in the world is black, then there's no...
Could you imagine, though, a black world where everybody just wears shades and wears all black? You go to the superstore, you're buying groceries, but black tomatoes, just techno bumping.
Yeah, it's like
Just
either
living in a world of darkness.
Yeah, either everyone is on drugs or everyone is a narc. I don't know which one it is.
Oh, man.
I hope it's
an
the
alternate
former.
reality,
Yeah.
So speaking of creative risks,
Yeah,
a
Tesko.
little skit there.
Jump us off here.
Well, yeah. Just like we were talking, before we started, I feel like it's a really common phase for people to go through production wise. And I know I went through it. I feel like you guys probably have as well. And you definitely got to go through this long phase of trying to replicate the people you look up to. But I feel like within that, you kind of get stuck in what's possible. It almost like there's a period where like your creative muscle almost gets stifled for a moment, and you start to feel like the only thing you can do is stuff that's already been done. And you kind of like tune your ear to perceive certain things as being correct, or so on. Like within a genre, you might be like, oh, I can't do this because that doesn't belong here, or this wouldn't traditionally be done this way, so it's not going to work. Or if you get caught up in chasing Spotify playlisting or labels, and you're adjusting your mixes and arrangements and all this stuff to always fit the specific mold, it kind of over a while begins to like atrophy some of your creative muscles, and things that are not really wrong, that are just a little outside of the box, start to sound wrong and start to sound like they shouldn't really be possible to do. And part of going through that phase for me was like an untraining phase, and writing all these experimental tracks where it'd be like, what if I did metal with house, or what if I did like, I don't know, weird shit.
I actually did that one time.
I think you might have even showed that before. Actually, it's a pretty cool combo.
It ended up okay.
Yeah. So it's like, it doesn't even have to end up amazing at the end of the day. We scrapped all those ideas, but like you, for example, that's like such a core part of your sound now. And it took doing a lot of those tracks to get there. And at first it's going to be really forced and shitty. But I feel like the more you can kind of break out and start pulling different influences and merging them that wouldn't typically go together, you're going to enter a new phase, which feels a lot more freeing, which doesn't feel like you're competing with artists XYZ in this genre, fighting for placements with labels XYZ, blah, blah, blah. And it starts to feel more like you found your own lane, because now you're creating the music that if you died tomorrow, that music would not exist anymore. It's so uniquely you that you actually become irreplaceable within your own little kind of field. And that feels like a lot better of a place to create from, because, I mean, personally, I'm not asking myself anymore, like, would this artist do this? Or what are these people going to think if they hear this at a show? Or, I was always just kind of catering to some imaginary audience that were like harsh critics and didn't approve of any excessively, or not excessively, but any, bless you, any more than usually creative than normal. You feel me?
Yeah, I think what that last thing you said is rings really true for me when I was in that stage, like the trying to impress an imaginary collective. Like thinking back on that period of time, I think some part of me, when I was like trying to make music that sounded like other artists that I liked, it was like trying to prove that I could do it a little bit, and like trying to impress my friends that I knew liked the same music at the time, right? Like it's like kind of a weird, just nonsensical drive to like just establish yourself as like having credibility and being able to do the thing, right? Because you think like, oh, if I'm going to be successful, like I need to have tracks that stand up next to all these other tracks. And then it's like, okay, so I need to prove that I can do the thing. And in like thinking that, you've completely missed the point, because doing that thing is not what makes you successful. That's what made them successful. And that really took a long time to like truly hit home for me. And I think like, as sad as it is, like that only happened after I felt like I hit that bar. Like I made something that was like what these other people had been doing within 5%, and still no one gave a fuck. Mm-hmm. And I was like, Oh, right. So that I've been doing this wrong for so many years.
Yeah.
God damn it.
Well, you do it so correctly that you just reach the finish line and you're like, there's no payoff here.
Yeah.
I just did this thing that Noisia did or Nero did or whatever.
Okay, well, I'm not saying I completed anything on that level. If I did that, I would be way more stoked.
So that's the thing is there are these artists that are at that level and you're, you know, the thing that got me thinking about this topic was doing feedback streams and listening to a lot of tracks and kind of having the same advice to give to a lot of people. And it's like, I understand that you're stoked about this track and it is cool. And I'm giving you kudos because you are technically capable. And the neuro basses you chose sound sick and the vocal chops sound sick and the drums are hitting. But like, I heard vocal chops in 2012 and I heard these basses done a million times. And there's songs that have solid motifs, great storytelling elements, catchy hooks and taglines that also have the elements you have. And as much as I got love for you, I'm not going back to listen to this track because I already got a catalog of tracks that fulfill this purpose and have better storytelling characteristics. So it's like, you know, obviously not saying that to be a dick, but being
it's the harsh
honest,
truth. It's the harsh truth. It really is.
I always assume Tesko's saying stuff just to be a dick.
Just to be a dick, yeah.
He's such a mean person, clearly, if you've ever listened to an episode. Just always angry.
Do you imagine if we just prefaced, I'm saying this to be a dick? Everybody says the opposite.
This is just to hurt your feelings. Just to be clear.
Just to be clear.
Prepare, you might cry.
But man, I was thinking, you know, on the feedback stream as I'm telling them, it's like, I'm not saying this because I'm saying this because your competition isn't the other people in the feedback stream. You're not competing with me. You're not competing with people in the dojo. You're competing with Ariana Grande and Taylor Swift and the new Spider-Man movie that just came out and all this other shit that's fighting for people's attention. Your great A+ execution of neuro basses and vocal chops is just not enough to fucking, you know, to meet the standard nowadays.
Yeah, to captivate.
Totally. And I was just going to say, that's part of why I got out of it too. Just I got tired of competing in that. And I find it a lot more fruitful. You can be doing way simpler shit that's way more unique instead of trying to like do the stuff that's already been done another level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it kind of reminds me of something I've heard Il Gates say before. It's like any song you make needs to be the perfect song for some moment in life. Mm-hmm. Like there has to be a reason to go back to your song. Like you said, like if you're just doing the B+ version of something that there's already 1,000 A+ versions of, nobody's coming back to your song, even if they stumbled on it. Even if, you know, your mommy gave you a gold star and put it on the refrigerator, it's like, okay, neat, cool, you've technically executed this, but why do I need it in my life? Whereas opposed to there's other songs that are like, maybe you even executed better, maybe your mix was better, but that song hits that, like, that piece of my soul that no other song does. And I need to go back to It's So Hard to Say Goodbye to Yesterday by Boyz II Men. That's been out for, you know, damn near 30 years. But like that particular song is the one I'm going to go back to and give more streams because I want to sing, cry, and think about sad shit.
Yeah, totally. One thing that, I mean, was a conscious choice when I was trying to do, I kind of had these two realizations in parallel. Like, I need to do, so let me just take you through the full spectrum of novice to where I am now. It was making stuff that I thought would impress people or impress people because it was similar to something that they already liked and I was doing the thing, to, okay, I need to do something different to like have my own identity, to have a go at this. And then that transformed into, okay, what combination of things can I throw together that's different And then I realized that that was all fruitless. Okay, let me just do exactly the music that I think is really true to me. And then as I had that realization and started working on stuff like that, I also realized that like something that I like that's important to me is making music that's I guess for lack of a better word, timeless. Like it needs like I need to be able to listen to it in 5 years and not feel like it was in a genre, like doing a genre thing, or like it has, like you said, it has a mood. There's like a moment for it. There's because all the best timeless songs are like so strongly like emotionally charged for like in one direction, right? Like they all have a moment that they would be perfect for. And that also really helped guide my songwriting in the right direction, because rather than just finding something that's like sick or impressive, which might land well if you do it so good that it's like the hot fucking neuro bass track or whatever, but instead you're like, would I want to listen to this in 3 years? Like, does this feel like it is not just made for right now in the current ecosphere of music, right? Like, does it have a quality to it that would withstand the test of time? And that has really helped guide the creative decisions to a more, I don't know, just overall well-rounded place, I feel like.
Totally. Yeah, I think that part you said about being able to listen to it in 5 years is when you think about like why is that? Why does something become aged? Well, oftentimes it comes from pulling from too narrow of influences that are pulling from cliches of that time. So if you're making house, if you're making D&B, whatever, if you're just looking at it from that lens and you're only pulling inspiration from artists in your little bubble, well, chances are a lot of them have a lot of the kind of cliche modern elements, which there's nothing wrong with that. But if you start looking at that as the bar to strive for, and you start looking at that as the pinnacle of greatness within the genre, you start to make really repetitive kind of stuff, really kind of formulaic, generic stuff. The thing is, a lot of the artists that you look up to have a broader span of influences, and they see how all the dots connect, how all the cliches of the genre got there. Why, for example, trying to think of a tune, but every once in a while there'll be a tune that comes out and it's an undeniable bop, but it's something that's been done before, and you're like, I see why this track blew up, because one of the tracks of this style had to blow up. But like, it's not bad, but you're like, why is it here? It's just kind of, it's just a track that sounds like this, that's fulfilling this role in this period of time, not so much that the track itself has substance. Where I was going with that was those artists, you hear a track like that and you're like, it's been done before, maybe it's 10% different. To that artist, it's really obvious how that kind of cliche thing came into the genre, where it came from originally, and then they might be pulling from blues or some other genre you never would have thought of, where that idea actually originated from, and then they bring that 10% different thing that to you as a fanboy of this artist, you're like, oh my god, that's the pinnacle of greatness. You're like, wow, this person is operating on a totally different level. I don't understand it. However, did they think to do that? And to them, they're just like, oh, well, people are abusing this idea that they were abusing like 50 years ago here. And then 10 years later, some dude tried this thing to build on top of that, but nobody's brought it to EDM yet, or whatever genre. Yeah. Let me try that. And then bam, everybody thinks you're a mastermind. And it's like,
yeah, I once heard that somebody say about Dr. Dre that he's a master of taking you know, what you expect to hear and like putting like a little twist on it where it's like, you know, it's like, oh, he took exactly that Parliament Funkadelic song, but then like replayed the line with a newer synth and beefed up the bass and the drums, and everybody goes absolutely nuts for it, you know, 20 years later. And, you know, walking that fine line between mass appeal and innovation, you know, like, yeah, okay, you want to give people what they want, but you also got to give them that twist to make it different enough so it's not just the exact same thing that's already been done a bunch.
Yeah.
And then you got to innovate again, because a while later, that thing you innovated with will have been copied a bunch. And it's now the standard cliche of, oh, that's just that 90s G-Funk thing.
Well, yeah, and the funny thing is you probably got the idea from somewhere as well, because there's only really so many original ideas to go around in the first place.
Right? I'd like at some point you have to level with yourself, like all art is derivative. Like even the most unique artists that you know took inspiration from 100 different sources and then said, what do I like? But without any inspiration of any art forms before them, they would not have made what they did. They might, I mean, I'm sure they would have still made something cool if they're a talented artist, but the reason the art today is made the way it is because of the art that was made 10 years ago, and that was made because of the art 10 years ago, all the way back to fucking caveman drawings in a cave. Like some dude took a stick, pulled it out of the fire, and randomly drew a line on the wall. They're like, oh, cool. And then some other guy's like, takes another stick and draws another line. They're like, oh yeah, look at that. There's two lines, you know?
Lines,
innovation. Just intensify.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Like that's literally the story of all art. Like that, it's inescapable.
And then one dude drew a curved line and was like,
oh,
but I'm not an artist.
Yeah.
One guy does a wavy line and they kill him with rocks.
So total sidetrack on cave art. That is, oh my god, this is actually pretty interesting, and I did not know this until the other day. Apparently, so a lot of like old cave drawings have like these weird vertical lines through them, and no one could ever figure out why they were drawn that way, because everyone goes into the, you know, the expedition into the cave to like fucking make their expose on the art and take pictures. They have all these like big ass like LED lights or whatever, you know, incandescent lights, or the most light you can get to bring into the cave to examine these things. Yeah, right. And then apparently one dude in France finally like went to go like look at some of these cave drawings, but he didn't have any like regular lights. I don't know if he did it intentionally or unintentionally, but he brought an oil lantern into the cave, and he noticed that with a flame as the light source, because it flickers back and forth, the vertical lines in the drawing actually created motion within the picture. So like things would move and like dance back and forth. And then all of a sudden they were like, oh, fucking duh. Like they had a fire, and it was like the next generation of cave art was like, oh shit, like we can make this stuff move back and forth. And I just thought that was so sick, because that's, I guess, like kind of the original movie.
Dude, that is amazing. And can I draw a parallel there?
Yeah.
The equivalent of bringing the lightiest lights to the cave is finally being able to technically achieve everything that all of your heroes do. Yeah. And then bringing the fucking oil lantern is coming back to the 1/4 chord progression and like keeping it simple.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh, it moves.
Yeah. Like playing the bass line on a bass guitar rather than using your bass guitar emulator on the grid. Like, you're like, oh, this is why it worked.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah, the context of the, like, why was this actually done, instead of just like just like bringing, you know, your current perspective to it. Like, I mean, what came up for me is like listening to like a super bassy, you know, club tune on an iPhone speaker and be like, why did they make these creative choices? I do not understand. This doesn't make sense. And then you finally hear it on the system. You're like, oh, it's all sub. And I couldn't hear it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Totally.
I wanted to return to something that you mentioned, cliches, as like kind of the antithesis of timelessness. And it reminded me of like kind of something that I still like to this day think about while I'm producing, which is like we all have those moments when you're making a song that you're like trying stuff out and throwing stuff in, and you're like, what if I did this thing here? Which is, and that thing that you're thinking of is kind of a cliche, but it works really well because you're like, oh, like it's done here and here and here. And like, oh, those always went off. Like, for instance, like a vocal that says switch or something like that, you know, or, I mean, there's a million things, but when you're producing, you know, those things that you put in and you're like, I know I'm kind of only doing this because it's done so much and it doesn't really. What's that?
Pride of snare.
Yeah, exactly. Pride of snare is the ultimate example of this.
What's
but you're doing
snare?
It's just, you know,
like
yeah, you know, in house songs,
in big room,
go. And then it's like the
you.
reverb ass snare.
Yeah, and it's always the same one.
Yeah.
So it's literally you know the creative decision you're making when you put that stuff in there, and it doesn't really satisfy, but it in the back of your head you're like, oh, this is gonna work so well. People are gonna think this is sick. But like that is a decision that I've had to consciously try and move away from to like make. I don't know, to in my own mind, something that is more timeless. I've had to like completely like recognize when I'm doing something like that and then go, okay, even though it works really well, it's not, it's a cliche, and cliches are not timeless. So think when you're producing and you start doing that stuff, if you are trying to make something timeless, you'll maybe try and catch yourself from doing it, because we all have, and it's something that I did a lot when I was still in that novice stage.
Yeah, I'd say there's a caveat there that it is good for workflow and you just, you know, you've heard it done a bunch of times, you know it's gonna work, you just get it out of the way, come back to it. And the other good thing about cliches where you can really use them to your advantage is because they're kind of universally known by everybody and everybody has the same expectations going into them, it becomes very, very good moment to make pattern interruptions and break expectations and set up a cliche, which you then end up, you know, taking a little switch or turn on.
Totally. And it's not to say that, I mean, there's a very fine line here, and it's all gray, where like, you know, like our drum fills cliche because every song uses them. Like, no, right? And like, there's obviously like things that have been done before a bunch that work really well that, you know, someone might consider a cliche that still work really well and fit the song. I think I'm more speaking from like you just know when you're producing and you throw something in there, not because you love it, but because you've heard it done before and it worked really well in this context. Like, you kind of know like it either feels good or it feels like, you know, you're doing that thing.
Yeah.
When it's the latter, think about it.
Well, the other kind of side of that is I wonder sometimes if it's a little more obvious to us because we painfully went through that. But for example, like on the feedback stream, there's one track that I'm thinking of where it was done well. And I see why they were stoked on it. Had cool, like super saw, wavy chords and a nice little vocal chop. And it was cool. But like, I'm not going back to that track. I understand why in the moment they were stoked on it. And I'm not saying never use cliches or like you can't work with them ever. I think, yeah, if you're trying to make timeless music, it's important to not use them as much. But even just in general, if the basis of the coolest part of your song is something that's a cliche, is not going to be enough to hold me. I don't care how good the mix down is. I don't care about none of that, because there's a song with actual lyrics that tells me how to feel, and I resonate with it when I'm feeling a specific way, and it has something memorable to it, and it's done amazingly, and it has the components of your song. So when I'm feeling that way, I'm going to think of that song. I'm not going to be like, man, I'm feeling down. I need something that has sick vocal chops and gnarly basses.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, totally.
Like, what am I gonna do? Just tears streaming down my face. Fuck, they're so sick. Like,
Maybe.
You
if
know?
it's a nausea track, maybe.
Yeah, right.
I thought of a
You feel me, right? It's like
yeah.
there's no substance.
I thought of a good example for a cliche that I used when I was a novice. Just completely bopping a Rick Ross grunt to use as like a like an interjection. Like, really? Like, I didn't even put the fucking chorus and flanger on it and make it a Skrillexy Rick Ross grunt. I just used the dry one. It's like,
Oh, that's funny.
Like,
I'm gonna
come
make
on.
it
That was
so
a
dry
huge,
for you.
2014 thing.
And I'm actually certain that I did that in 2014. That is specifically the year that I did that.
It's okay. We've all used the Rick Ross sample. We've all used the bed squeak. We've all used the Pride of snare.
Actually, one of the songs we fucking played in our listen to our shitty old stuff haha stream had a Pride of snare in it.
Of course. Why would it not have a Pride of snare in it? It's a better question.
Yeah, it was that electro.
Yeah, shouts out to episode 85, roasting our early tracks.
Yes.
Damn,
Good
85
fun.
episodes deep.
Good
Oh,
fun.
yeah.
We're almost at that 2-year mark.
Oh man,
So I think
crazy.
it's becoming more clear to me that like our discussion around like timelessness does like kind of factor back into taking creative risks, because I feel like some of the most timeless albums are ones that had like a lot of creative experimentation to bring into like their way of doing music, right? Like thinking of a good example is always tough on the spot, but like, I don't know, Pink Floyd, like a lot of like guitar experimentation, but they still have that like classic melancholy vibe, and a lot of stuff that like was done for the sake of like, wow, we really love this. This is interesting. People aren't doing it, but we love it. Ends up being like the stuff that stands out and people come back to because it doesn't feel forced, doesn't feel contrived, doesn't feel like they were trying, feels like they were having fun and making music that they loved, and then it ends up being both like timeless and successful.
So something I was thinking about, because I feel like my journey was very segmented and I held on to this belief, and I wonder if subconsciously people feel the same way, where like, I mean, you guys know my story, but like a couple of years just doing like metal and recording bands, a couple of years of just doing straight electronic, dubstep, house, whatever, and now mainly like vocal based hip hop, whatever. And I felt like for a long time, it was just when I was doing one, I was just in one and just viewing it from the lens. And when I did the electronic thing, I left all the metal stuff behind and just went fully into the electronic world and was trying to be a dubstep DJ, whatever, artist, producer, DJ, whatever the fuck. And then when I started doing the hip hop thing, I was just like, man, I need to build up some chops as a vocalist, you know, like stuff like that. And I was never playing to what I had previously built up because I was like, nah, doesn't go together. Not even going to try. And when I realized that, like, oh, that, you know, that band I listened to in grade school or high school, turns out a lot of people actually listen to them. what if I sample that? What if I take a line from that? And I started realizing I could pull from all these different places. Because, I mean, you guys played Tony Hawk. You guys know that soundtrack. So I put that in. I remixed that. It's like, think about it. I make an original in that style, trying to copy my favorite artist, or I sample something that has meaning to all of us already. I bring us all back to a time or place or memory or emotion that I know if I had, certainly other people out there had that. So, I mean, tell me, how would you guys feel if you come across there's a song that you heard from your favorite video game growing up or a movie you love to watch or something, and it's like a remix of that song that slaps by a new artist that you never heard of?
You get fucking stoked. Like,
Yeah.
like perfect, like in Worlds by Porter, like one of the songs in there, like the outro is literally like basically the exact same chord structure and format like of like a Zelda song, and it like hit all the nostalgia feels for me, and it's like that kind of stuff. And he didn't sample it, like he replayed it with his own instruments and stuff, but like that's that nostalgia just like adds a level of emotional depth that brings you into the project. And even better, like I'm sure some people didn't even really pick up on the fact that he was like 90% of the way to like recreating a Zelda song, because he did it himself with his own stuff in a very similar context. Like that is also something that you can achieve with that, like that goal, right? Is like subconscious nostalgia. Like someone could like really be drawn to something and have this like really hard emotional pull, but if they're not like musically literate, they might not understand that it's like nearly the same thing as this thing they used to love. They just know that it gives them this emotional pull and charge that like brings them in, right?
Yeah.
Two things. Musically illiterate just made me imagine somebody like listening to music with headphones. They're like, I don't know what's going on.
I said musically literate, but I guess the opposite of
the opposite.
Yeah.
I
don't know what's going on. Yes, I think it's cool.
So that Porter example you said is perfect, because I'm pulling myself into the mindset of Porter writing that track, and if I compare now me versus previous me, I feel like previous me would first off not even thought that Zelda could be a thing that I could reference and not be like just blatantly like corny and obvious and just whack with it. And then two, I also would have probably dived headfirst into like studying like what Zelda chord progressions are and shit like that. Yeah. Then I probably would have overcomplicated it with some other shit. But like, you know, at this point, and probably what Porter did, he's like, everybody has heard this literal phrase before. Let me take this chord progression and just work with this. So now already on a subconscious level, he could transpose it up or down or whatever. Just like takes no work at all. It's like, I realize it's not the point to create everything from scratch by yourself. Sometimes the point is, let's pull from something that already resonates with so many people and work with that.
Yeah. I'd also be willing to bet that when Porter wrote that outro that is like 90% to Zelda, I'd be willing to bet he didn't do that like as people are going to love this Zelda reference. He's probably just like fucking loved Zelda himself, of course, and made a synth. He's like, shit, this kind of sounds like, and then like played something. And he's like, this kind of sounds like, and I was like, oh, I love this. I could just use this in the outro to do this thing. And like, just probably more naturally worked into it, which I think is also a good caveat for almost everything that we've said so far. Is like, we've discussed some specific ways to accomplish this goal, but like, throw all of that out the window when you write your own music. And like, if if you stumble into a situation in which these things apply, like, yeah, bring them in, but don't ever intentionally set out to like do the one thing, because that's also not actually going to work out, right? Like, it's important to note, like, none of this stuff is just like set out to write a song, do this thing, right?
I half agree.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, maybe to Porter, it could have come naturally and he could have written it. But when you listen to a project like Worlds, there is very, very deep intent into what kind of sound choice, what kind of progressions, what kind of this and that. And there's very clear intent on what the project is not supposed to be as well. And I think even if he stumbled across that accidentally, I think there was still some part of him that decided, I'm going for a virtual video gamey kind of aesthetic. It has a nostalgic feel to it. It has this characteristics, and then wrote that track.
Yeah, that's fair.
Mm-hmm.
I would agree.
I think one thing I want to make sure we bring up is, you know, with all of this, taking risks, getting original, not getting bogged down in cliches. Yes, absolutely. And there is a point of diminishing returns on the other end of that. Like, if you're too cliche, everybody's like, this just sounds like everything else. Nobody cares. If you're too original, same thing. We're like, I don't know what's going on here. It's like, oh, I'm original. I don't use 4/4 time or 6/8 time or even 5/4 time or 7/8 time. Nope, I'm using 13/958 time, and I don't use any known human language. I don't use any human scale that music has ever been done in. I've used instruments I made up only that have no connection to people's nostalgia. You know, it's like, okay, cool. So you just fucking clang noises together and record it and then put it out there, and people are like, this hurts. This hurts my brain, my soul, and my ears. And I don't know what to do with it. You know,
aliens finally visit Earth for the first time, and it's for Coachella. This guy's headlining.
Yeah, if your music is so complicated and unique that you make a musically literate person feel like that illiterate person we described earlier, I don't know what's going on. Yeah, you've also missed the point.
Yeah, it's like I heard it described once, and I think I've said it on the podcast before, but kind of like a bell curve where, like, you know, if you're too cliche, like, nobody cares, this is passe, and then you get up the curve and it's like, oh, this is kind of old, but like it hits the spots, you know. Like, I think that's where a lot of like production and TV music lives. Like, oh, we just need a thing that does the, hey, we're dancing at a club right now. Yeah. And put it on in the background transition of the reality show, and then you get to the top where it's like pop music lives. Like, you know, Drake or Ariana Grande or The Weeknd can jump on whatever trend, and the fact that they're so big, they can make that pop again, you know. But then, like, if you're a new artist, you got to like live somewhere on this front curve over here where it's like, we're moving towards the future, we're innovating, there's still some connection to the nostalgia. And then if you get too far out in front, too avant-garde, shouts out to episode, I think 3 maybe, how avant-garde is too avant-garde. You know, you get to the point where, like, I don't know what this is. And yeah, okay, there might be a niche audience. You might be able to find your 1,000 true fans up there. And if that's what your soul is and no other type of music making satisfies you, go for it. And find your tribe. Rock on. You know, you might make it. That's awesome. But like, for most people doing most things, like we've been talking about this episode, most people are falling a little too far on the cliche side of things and just need to like bump over the hump and get a little less afraid of taking the thing you liked about the music you already listened to and twisting it. You know, try things, see what works. They're not all going to work, but that's okay. You don't need every song you start writing to be a hit. You just need to find your mash of things that is really you. And like Tesko said, like, if you died tomorrow, nobody else would be making this right now.
Yeah. And I think it's important to note, like, you probably will make a majority of the songs that don't come out or that don't work if you're trying to do something new and interesting. Like, it's going to take a lot of tries before you're like, oh shit, this is how this works. This combination of things works really good. Like, it's going to take experimentation.
Totally. One thing I want to also just throw into the conversation before we get out of here is 2 quotes I think about a lot. One being from Dylan himself, Bill Gates, where he said, it's like, I think in the first year of us working together, he said something along the lines of like, everybody wants to think outside of the box, but nobody actually defines what that box is. So how do you know when you're thinking outside of it? And I'll get to that in a sec. The other quote I think about, I think it was Steve Vai, who's a guitar player, was talking about, or was it him? I can't remember, but somebody said, you can either get good at all the techniques and practice all the techniques equally, or you can have a style. And I think about that a lot as well.
Oh my
because
God, that's
I think
beautiful.
Those 2 quotes tie into each other a lot, where it's like, the way I vote now, I feel like I have as much artistic freedom as I could ever want to express my ideas. And I feel like part of that was defining my original box of what are all my favorite things in music? What are kind of like my defaults? Like if I don't have a certain mood or message or feeling or whatever that I'm going for, this is just like what I love to hear in music. So it's just like a default to nighttime mood and like these kind of sounds and these kind of vocals and so on. So now that I have that box, I can come into sessions very intentionally where it's like, even if I produce 20 tracks in this style, they're all going to have some unifying factor where you'll be able to tell that it's my work and it has my style and my sound. And now if I go in and I'm like, all right, let's open up this box. Let's take a look at the inner workings. All right, how about we try a daytime track and no hi-hats or something? Bam, that track is not going to sound anywhere close to the other tracks, but it'll still sound like me. And a big part of that comes from, again, that standard kind of set of variables in your box, and then coming every day and intentionally, just like a synth, tweaking 1 or 2 knobs here or there every day. How does the formula look if everything stays the same minus 1 or 2 things here? All right, what if I leave those back and then I tweak 1 or 2 things here? What if I throw a sample into the mix, right? And then it becomes this like input-output machine where you tweak your couple of settings the way you like them, and then whatever inspiration you have for that day, you run it through your box, and the box spits out a track in your style.
Amen.
Yeah, that's a cool way to look at it.
So get out there and take some risks, everybody. Make a box outside the box and run your influences through your lens. Get weird, get real weird with it.
Box your influences.
And then kick the box and make a dent and then see what happens after that.
Yeah. It's like old TV. Just kick it till it works.
Or like Jimi Hendrix with his amp when he like tore a hole in it.
Oh, yeah. Cut it with a razor blade. And like, all right, that'll really fuzz up my sound.
Oh yeah.
Nobody was doing that. Nobody cuts their speaker on purpose. Wait, what? You took a risk.
Just don't cut your studio monitor.
Yeah, I'm not gonna do that.
All right, humans.
Yeah, well, go make some boxes.
Peace. And peace among worlds.
Haha.
Haha. Humans, thank you so much for being with us yet again. That was a good one. Go out and take some creative risks already, all right? Hope you guys have fun with that. You can visit us at thehumanmusicpodcast.com for more episodes, socials, and some free sound packs. And you can definitely find us online at the Human Music Podcast on Instagram and at Human Music Pod on Twitter. Go support our sponsors like Guest Practices, where you can learn from Seth Drake at the Approach Institute, And your first class over there is free. He's the best engineer we know, so go learn from him. The weekly download, where you can learn directly from Ill Gates and his private weekly group lessons and get access to over 250 more episodes in the archive for just $20 a month. Yummy Strums, so you can get high quality guitar samples, loops, one-shots, racks, and more from our very own Tesko. And Dojo TV, where you can get free producer live stream classes from the Dojo Senseis. All right, y'all. Again, that song behind me, song of the week, Tesko, Smells Wonky. Go run that up too. And we'll see you next week, where we give you a little intro to modular synthesis. All right.
I like it.